Hi guys, PB. So this video today is all about Boiler Plus. If you're not sure what it is or when it comes in or what you need to do to comply with it, then hopefully this video is going to help you. Now the good news is you probably already comply. So the rules are, this is for England only. If you're fitting a new boiler into an existing property, a gas boiler, it needs to be a minimum of 92% ERP. That's the energy related products that came in last year. Now you'll struggle to buy a boiler that isn't an ERP boiler unless it's old stock, but that's the first thing you need to remember. It needs to be an energy efficient boiler, 92%. The second thing is, if it's a heat only or a system boiler, you need to provide a boiler interlock, so thermostat and programmer timer. So that's that covered. Now the extra step in Boiler Plus concerns combi boilers. So if you're fitting a combi boiler, you need to comply with one of the 4 extra measures: load compensation, weather compensation, flue gas heat recovery and smart controls. Now I'm going to give you my opinion as an installer on Boiler Plus, but I'm also going to get the views from Laura at Installers First, who's going to go through the technical factual part of it, and then we're going to get an opinion from Tim Pollard, who's an industry expert who actually helped on the board when they were consulting over what measures to introduce for Boiler Plus. So hopefully you'll get a rounded view. I'm not an expert. I'm going to try and give you my opinion, how it affects me. But hopefully at the end of this, it'll be a rounded view, non-biased view. We'll have a look at all different controls from all manufacturers to give you an idea on what you need to do to comply with Boiler Plus. So first of all, we're going to hear from Laura at Installers First.
Hi everyone, it's Laura from Installers First. Welcome to today's lesson on Boiler Plus. Pen and paper ready. So, what is Boiler Plus? From the 6th of April 2018, there's a new piece of legislation called Boiler Plus. It's been brought in by BEIS, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. It aims to reduce domestic carbon emissions and encourage energy efficiency. Gas-fired heating accounts for around 60% of what is spent a year on energy bills. So bringing in these measures should save people money. Okay, so what is Boiler Plus? The specifics. Number 1. Any gas boiler installed must have an efficiency of at least 92% ERP under the Energy Related Products Directive. You all know what that is, but at least you should. If you don't, go and look it up. Number 2, in addition, all new gas and oil boiler installations must include boiler interlock, time and temperature controls, i.e. program timer and a thermostat. Number 3, gas combination boilers must also include at least one additional energy saving option. Flue gas heat recovery, which is a device which enables you, I'm reading off the sheet as you can tell, to reuse heat from your boiler that would otherwise be wasted. Weather compensation is a device within the boiler that communicates between the boiler and the outside temperature, adjusting the heat accordingly. And load compensation, adjust the radiator circulating temperature to be hotter when the house is cold, etc. etc. Smart thermostat with automation and optimization, basically products that let consumers remotely control their boiler temperature via a smart device, i.e. a smartphone or an iPad or something like that. Other products are available. Okay, so Boiler Plus, with recap, has been brought in by BEIS. It starts on the 6th of April 2018. The new legislation is part of the government's Clean Growth Strategy, and it aims to cutting carbon emissions and reducing heating costs whilst making homes warmer and more efficient. That's it for today. Thank you.
Okay, so you've heard some of the facts there from Laura. Boiler Plus is being introduced to increase energy efficiency, reduce energy wastage and give the consumer more control over their heating system. I think this is a good idea. The downside to it is, how is it going to be policed? Now, if I'm quoting for a new boiler and I'm including weathercom, loadcom, smart controls or flue gas heat recovery versus a guy who's not complying with Boiler Plus, I'm going to be more expensive. I'm going to lose the job. And this is what worries me. It's going to have to be policed. Now, traditionally in our industry, things aren't policed very well. It's going to be policed by building control. If you don't comply, you can face a fine. It's reportable to the Health and Safety Executive, Gas Safe Register. They can report non-compliant work as well. but is anyone actually going to police this? Is anyone going to check it? The main thing for me is with the consumer. Now, if they don't want to comply with Boiler Plus, they can face a fine. But more importantly, if you're quoting for a job and you do a job and you don't comply with Boiler Plus, the customer is within their rights then to not pay because you've not installed something that complies. And this is where I think it might be enforced, because if people know if they don't do it, they're not going to get paid, they're going to be more likely to do it basically. And it's not hard. The main thing you're going to have to do is some research, what controls you can fit that comply. Either choose, load comp, weather comp, the easiest ones to choose from, or smart control. Work out the boiler you're fitting. If you just fit one manufacturer, if you fit a load, just do a bit of research, find out what controls you can use that comply, and then just go with that. It's a lot easier. I mean, if you're fitting a Worcester Bosch Comfort One with an RF stat, this is a load compensating stat, and this plugs straight into the boiler. It will take you 5 minutes to install this. Yeah, it might be 150 quid, but if you're fitting a third party control that's cost you 50 quid and you're having to run cables to the boiler, mount it on the wall, run it from a fuse spur, the amount of time you've took to not comply with Boiler Plus, you could have much easier stuck in this plug and play clock, complied with Boiler Plus, and you'll get paid at the end of the day. So you're going to have to, like I say, do a bit of research, find out what controls suit the boiler you're fitting, and go from there. So let's go through the 4 extra measures. We'll start with load compensation. If I was explaining this to a customer, I would say, let's imagine you want your heating to come on at 5 o'clock at 23 degrees. The boiler knows the temperature of the house. So if your temperature is currently at 21, the boiler knows to modulate down, come on at a lower rate to get your house up to 23, because it's not got that much work to do to raise the house by 2 degrees. If your house is, say, 14 degrees when it comes on, it knows it's got a bigger gap to make up, so it modulates to a higher rate and gets you to that temperature. It does this by sensing the return temperature. So if on the heating circuit, if it's returning at a higher temperature, it knows that the system's already, quite warm. It's not got to work that hard. If the return's coming in at a lower temperature, it knows it needs to kick in at a higher rate to get you up to the desired temperature. So it's modulating the boiler, using less energy when it needs to, using the correct amount of energy to get you to your end goal. You're still going to get to 23 degrees. The difference the customer will notice is if their house is already 21 degrees, their radiators aren't going to get scalding hot. So they know the heating's going to be on at 5. They're going to touch the radiator at 10 past and think, this isn't very hot, my heating's not working. It is, the boiler knows it doesn't need to give you that much heat to get you to the 23 degrees. Your house is still going to be 23 degrees. And that's the step that we're going to have to get around with the customers, trying to convince them that, yeah, your radiator isn't red hot, but your heating is working and you are going to get to 23 degrees. So the second one, weather compensation. The way this works, as far as I can understand it, is your boiler will now talk to either a local weather station or a sensor that you fitted outside. So for using the same example, 5 o'clock, you want 23 degrees, outside it's -10, your boiler will come on earlier. It will come on at a higher rate because it knows it's got to work hard to get you to 23 degrees because it's so cold outside. On the other side, if it's warm outside, the boiler's going to modulate down, come on at a lower rate because it knows it's not got to work so hard. It's just another way of not always having your boiler running at full rate when it doesn't need to. You're just saving energy. So companies have come up with a lot of controls have weather comp sensors that go on the outside. Baxi have introduced one that is a separate sensor that runs through the air intake and the flue into the boiler and connects onto the PCB, and that just clips on the wall outside. You'll have to look into this because the downside of that is if your boiler's on a south facing wall and the weather sensor is going to be in sunshine, it's not going to perform as it's meant to. So as with any of these controls, do your research, look into them. So that's weather comp. Then we've got flue gas heat recovery. So if you don't know what that is, the way it works is it's a component inside the boiler or externally fitted on the flue that recycles the heat energy that normally goes out of your flue and is wasted to preheat the cold water before it's heated up for hot water. So you're using a bit of that energy to preheat your cold water before it goes through the plate heat exchanger, giving you increased flow rates, better hot water performance. The downside to that is either you've got to fit something externally on the top of your boiler in with the flue system, or it comes in the boiler and the boiler will be more expensive or a larger boiler. So you've got to think about that when you're quoting the size of the boiler, the price of the boiler. Is going to be more than just, you know, looking at a control, that because you're going to be fitting a control anyway. So the cheaper option, if you don't need that hot water performance, is going to be a load comp or a weather comp control. The last one is smart controls. So to me, smart controls, when I'm talking to a customer, it's basically you can control when your heating system comes on when you're not at home. So away from home, you've got control over the system. So if you explain to the customer, your heating's due on at 5, but you're going to be late. You're going out after work, or you're working late, you're not going to be until 7. You can, on your smartphone, tell your boiler, I'm not going to be back till 7, don't come on. Save yourself 2 hours worth of heating that you don't need. Again, saving energy, reducing waste. The most important thing about smart controls is they need to have automation and optimization. So basically it means that the smart control can control when it comes on and off, and also it learns. So it will learn the time it takes your house to get from one temperature to another. So it's sort of an intelligent thermostat. So basically it's not just an on-off control, it is actually doing something that's smart. That's the way I understand it anyway. So that's your 4 options. If you're still a bit confused, get yourself a copy of Gas Engineer magazine. There's a good article in there, 10 things you need to know, and it goes through everything. The HHIC have released sort of a flow diagram that you can go through to get yourself familiarised with it, but it's also got some interesting information such as the additional costs, average costs of fitting each of these options, and the amount you'll save on your bill. Just something you can give the customer to say, look, if we do this load comp, it's going to cost you about 50 quid, you're going to save £4 a year on your bill, it's going to take you this long to earn it back. Because some customers like to know that kind of information. As with anything in this trade, I like to give the customer as much information as possible. So don't just say, yeah, I'm going to fit this just because. Just tell them why you're going to fit it, why it's good for them, why it's going to save them money, why it suits their lifestyle or suits their system. Because the more they know about their system, the less problems they're going to have with it, the less callbacks you're going to get. Okay, so how's this going to affect our trade? Let's give an example. So I'm going to quote today, little old lady. She wants a combi boiler. She doesn't want smart controls. She's not got a mobile phone. She's not au fait with the internet. So that's that ruled out completely. Flue gas heat recovery is next. So she's got a shower, electric shower, wash and basin and a kitchen sink. She doesn't need great flow rates, great hot water performance, any more than a standard combi would give her. She doesn't want to pay for that, so let's rule that out. So we're looking now at load comp and weather comp. So weather comp, we could fit an external sensor, or we could use a control that comes with a weather comp sensor, such as I fit Vaillant boilers, so I could fit this VCR 700. That's got its own weather comp sensor that goes outside, talks to this, talks to the boiler. It's also load compensating, so we could go for that. If she doesn't want a digital clock, on a Vaillant we've got an option of this time switch 150. It's the old analog style clocks that we all know and love. Basic on off. You'd think, yeah, that's not going to comply, but if you fit this is the VTR 50, I think it's called. This is a load compensating weather room thermostat. It's about 20 quid's worth, so it's hardwired. We have to take that to the bus terminals on the boiler, but it makes us comply with load comp, and it's not too difficult for it to use. So that would be your option there. Okay, so let's have a look at the range of controls you can get. We'll start with Worcester Bosch. A lot of you fit Worcester Bosch boilers, so you know about the Wave. This is a smart control with weather comp. It talks to local weather stations and it's load compensating. So you've covered 3 of the bases of Boiler Plus with this one control. It's not expensive. So that is probably for Worcester the best way of complying with Boiler Plus. We spoke about this one before. This is the Comfort one, which is a remote RF stat and a timer in the boiler, and you can get the Comfort 2, which is a remote programmable room stat. Both load comps, so both comply. Plug straight into the boiler, nice and easy to fit. Vaillant have got so many options. All their controls will comply with Boiler Plus. Their smart control is the V-Smart, again, weather comp, load comp, and a smart control, so you've covered 3 bases. Now the thing to talk about with controls, the other thing to consider is, if you're fitting a new boiler, it's probably going to last you at least 10 years, but you have got to think, if you're fitting a Vaillant control and you fit a Vaillant boiler, it's going to work fine together because they talk to each other. If you then change the Vaillant boiler to a Worcester Bosch boiler, this programmer isn't going to talk to the Worcester Bosch boiler, so you're going to have to change it. That's where OpenTherm comes in. So OpenTherm, such as a Nest, is a smart control that will talk to a range of different boilers. Famously though, Worcester do not allow OpenTherm, so it won't talk to a Worcester Bosch boiler. It will literally just become an on-off switch. But if you want some of the smart properties of the Nest, it is an OpenTherm control, so you just check again that your boiler or the boiler you're fitting will comply with OpenTherm controls. There's loads of third-party ones. This is Drayton Wish one. They also do a Weiser. Again, have a look. If it's something you want to fit, check on the manufacturer's website. Give the manufacturer a ring. Ask them, is it OpenTherm? You know, does it comply with Boiler Plus? If it does, yeah, great. And you can start quoting for that with your job. It's about doing your research, getting to know the controls and what complies. And once you've done that, it'll be easy because it'll become second nature to you. You know, at the minute I fit a lot of these Danfoss TP1s because I like them. But will it comply with Boiler Plus? I need to find out, is it load compensating? Probably not, so I won't be able to use that on a combi, but I can still use that on system boilers, heat only boilers. It's about, you know, they talk about learning thermostats. We've got to be learning tradesmen. We've got to learn how we can comply, what the controls do. I'm not an expert at controls. You know, I have my boilers, I fit Baxi and I fit Vaillant, so I know what controls to use for those boilers. But if I was fitting something else, then I'd just have to do that extra little bit of research. I was lucky enough recently to go and see my friend Tim Pollard. Now, Tim has been in the industry for a long time. He's well respected, well looked up to, and a good friend of mine. So I know that he was part of the consultancy when they came up with Boiler Plus. So I thought it was worthwhile getting his opinion. So let's go and talk to Tim now.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Pollard here. I've been asked to give you my opinion on the Boiler Plus policy, which of course comes into force in April 2018. Firstly, I do have to say that I do have a slight vested interest in that I was part of the group which offered advice to BEIS, the government department who introduced the policy, some of which they agreed with, some of which they disagreed with. But am I in favour of Boiler Plus? Well, very broadly, yes, I am, wholeheartedly. Is it perfect? No, of course not. But I believe that it makes a significant step forward as one that we should be encouraged by. Let's just remember that the idea of Boiler Plus was to help consumers make better use of their energy by increasing their control, increasing their choice, and also potentially making energy savings when heating their home. I cannot believe that anyone would not be in favour of that. So in mandating a minimum 92% ERP rating for boilers and in the use of time and temperature controls has to be a good step forward. Now some of you would argue, and perhaps quite rightly, that those circumstances are already in place. But nonetheless, I believe that getting them down on paper makes a firm commitment and leaves no doubt whatsoever as to the requirement. Secondly, we have the options when fitting a combination boiler which must be fitted as well as those two conditions, and that is of course flue gas heat recovery, weather compensation, load compensation, or smart controls which feature automation and optimization. Now again, there may have been other options included. There wasn't under these circumstances. But I believe that this is an ongoing story. This is not the end of the story, this is the beginning. And if you look at the response to the consultation that BEIS made, you'll see that they are seeking evidence for other options which may be included in the future. Now, I have heard all sorts of arguments on this and other regulations in the past, and many of which would suggest that actually the people who should be most encouraged to comply with these regulations are those who are currently working outside the current regulations, and that may be the case. However, that doesn't make the regulation bad. That makes the policing of the regulation not as strong as it should be, and I would agree with that. Thirdly, I'd say this. As ever, this is part of a much bigger picture. The government has a very challenging carbon target to make. We have to reduce our carbon by 80% by 2050. And in order to do that, we're going to have to start making some very significant steps forward. If you look at the government's green growth strategy, you'll see how Boiler Plus fits into that overall picture, but that there are many other things to come, some of which will be much further reaching. So, I repeat, I'm in favour of it. I'm sure that there will be difference of opinion, and it's up to you to make your opinions known.
Hopefully you found that from Tim quite useful. With regards to Boiler Plus being the first step, I think that's really a good bit of information. If you think about it, there's other things you can do to reduce energy wastage, increase efficiency. The main one would be lagging your pipes. Now, that could have been introduced, but to bring it all in at the same time, you know, say we've got to do this with the controls, we've got to lag the pipes, we've got to balance the systems, stuff like that. If you brought it all in at the same time, it would be hard to get people to do it. So I think they're bringing it in a step at a time, and the end goal will be to bring us up to, so let's say, the European standards, like the Germans, with our consideration for lagging, system balancing, using the correct boiler components, not just slinging a combi in because it's the easiest option, but actually thinking about the house, the customer's needs, requirements, and above all thinking about energy efficiency. So that's it. Boiler Plus comes into force on the 6th of April 2018. So if I were you, I would get down your merchants, have a chat with them about their controls, what boilers you fit in, and just remember, if it's in England and it's a gas appliance, a new gas appliance in a house, system boiler, heat only boiler, 92% ERP rating, which you'll struggle not to buy one these days, but it's got to be a 92% ERP. And if you're fitting a combi boiler, you've got to go for one of the 4 extra measures: load compensation, weather compensation, flue gas heat recovery, or a smart control. So once you've worked out what's the best way to comply for the boiler you're fitting, you can then apply that when you're quoting and when you're discussing with the customer what's going to be the best way of controlling their system, or the most suitable controls for their needs that complies with Boiler Plus. So all that's left for me to say is thanks for watching. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's given you a bit of information and made you feel a little bit more comfortable about Boiler Plus.